Hey everyone, it's Shelby here. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. I'm glad you're with me today because today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the second half of January. I have a lot to talk about. I was reading a ton in January. Best month that I've had as far as reading goes in a while. So I'm super excited to talk about all these books. But before we get into it, I would just like to again reiterate that if you enjoy this video, you are enjoying my content, that you are hitting that thumbs up button and especially hitting that subscribe button. I have a goal to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year, but I can only do that with the help of you all. So I very much appreciate it. If you're new here, I post videos every Thursday and Sunday, romance books, kind of my jam. So glad you're with me. But yes, this may end up being a little bit of a longer video. I'm going to try to be as short and sweet on all these books as I can, but I did end up reading 9 books in the latter half of January. Don't know how that happened, but somehow I made it happen. So I have a lot of books to talk about. I will try at the end to also go over a little bit of my stats for the month, my reading stats, my goals, if I met some of my goals, whatnot there. So enough rambling. We're going to hop right into it. So first book that I read in the latter half of January is going to be The Bombshell Effect by Carla Sorensen. This is the first book of the Washington Wolves series. This is a contemporary romance. And this story, the female main character of this story, she moves into her late father's home. He has passed away and has granted her his home, and she also finds out that she has inherited his football team that he owns. And right next door is one of the players from the football team that he owns. He is a single dad, and he is very wary of newcomers and especially wary of attractive women, mostly because he's very protective of his daughter, with him being a single dad. But of course, these two characters have run-ins together because they are neighbors and they have the hots for one another. And then he finds out that she is the new owner of his team, so he has to play nice with her. They don't get off to the greatest start because he's kind of grumpy with her. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. This was fun and it was cute. I liked the female main character because she was a pretty strong character. She didn't let his assholiness get the best of her, and she didn't let him walk all over her. She stood her ground. So I like that. I did feel like this kind of had a little bit of a slow pace, and spoiler alert, this does feature a third act breakup, which I am not the biggest fan of. I also just felt the female main character had some unresolved issues with her dad. They were kind of estranged, and that just kind of felt like it was unresolved, or at least it was resolved much more quickly than I feel like it should have been. But otherwise, this was a fine romance. Then I read Feast of Fools by Naomi Loud. This is the second book of the Perverse City series. I read this as an ARC. I ARC read the first book of this series last year, so this is a dark fantasy / paranormal romance. This town is ruled by these different gods. They are not very nice gods, and they have all these families that worship the gods, and so they are kind of the ruling class of the town. The first book has the people, two people that end up becoming the leaders of the town, and so they're all sort of a friend group, kind of a frenemies group. And this one, we focus on Gemini. He is the servant of the god of trickery, and he ends up meeting our female main character and is very drawn to her. He has picked her in this hunt that they do where they hunt people and slaughter them. So he picked her, but then he decides to let her go because he's so drawn to her. And then he ends up kidnapping her and taking her to his mansion to keep her, and to try to, he wants to keep her for himself and to try to convince her that this is the best situation and that she should be as obsessed with him as he is with her. So definitely not the best, like morally best kind of characters. These characters are definitely more the morally gray variety. I would honestly say even more like morally black characters. I give this one 4 stars though. I just really enjoyed this world that Naomi Loud has created. I couldn't put this down. It was very fun. It was very dark, obviously, but I really just I love seeing Gemini's obsession with her. Definitely has that he falls first kind of trope to it. There's forced proximity, captor captive in here, and I just thought it was so fun. I just think this is one of the most unique stories that I have read. I really enjoyed the first one, and now this one. There should be more books coming out in this series as well, because there are more characters in this frenemy group that I just can't wait to hear from. So I'm a big fan. Then I read The King's Maiden by L. Parker. This is the first book of the Camelot Court series. This is a dark romance. This is another arc that I read. So this one is about our female main character. She is in debt. She's trying to go to college, but she is thinking that she's going to have to quit school because she has so much debt. So she signs up to join. There is this frat house on campus that their entire frat is modulated after King Arthur's court. So she joins this competition to become a maiden to one of the members. And if she lasts through this competition, at the end, she can win a lot of money. But in order to do that, when she is a maiden to one of the knights, she has to do anything and everything that that knight tells her to do. And it's only for like 30 days. So she does this, but of course this does end up becoming a white shoes story. She is very drawn and attracted to 3 different guys in this house. That all have different agendas going on, and she's not really clued into a lot of those different agendas. This does end on a cliffhanger. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars because overall I did really enjoy this story. I really, really loved the author's writing style. It was quirky and funny, and I just felt like it was very relatable. I just jived really well with her writing style. I enjoyed the characters that she wrote too, and the sexual tension between these characters. I was just left with a lot of questions with reading this. And so I don't know if this is like the questions that I have, it's just things that are going to end up being more like revealed later on. So I'm just kind of like going with it for now. I did also kind of feel like it was weird that all of these guys are immediately drawn to her. Like it had a little bit of that insta lust thing going on. I'm not the biggest fan of insta lust, or especially insta love. Insta lust I can like maybe go for it, but it's not my thing. So I felt like that was also a detractor for this. But overall, I did really enjoy this. And I'm hoping I can sign up and get an arc of the second book when it comes out. I think it's going to be coming out in March. The author said that she's going to be doing like kind of rapid fire release of these books so that you don't have to wait too awful long with the cliffhangers that she is doing for these stories. There is also some really great rep for like mental health rep. Our female main character is dealing with grief. She also has some panic attacks. There's also chronic illness rep in here too, because I believe she has asthma. So I did enjoy that aspect of the story as well. Then we get to Sweet Summer Serpentine by Rose Santoriello. This is the second book of the Augury University series. This is like a cozy fantasy romance series. I believe all the books in this are standalone, so that's why I picked up the second book. I did mention the characters that were from the first book of this series, but I feel like I would be totally fine going back to the first one later on if I wanted to. You don't really have to read these like in any particular order. Anyway, so this one is about two characters. They are paired together to work together to try to find a cure for cancer. Our male main character of the story, he is a serpent. He is a professor at this university. He deals with like botany, herbology kind of stuff. And then she works for this company making like a chem lab basically, but she like makes potions. She got this job because she was accidentally kind of found somewhat of a cure for cancer, even though she didn't know what she did, and it became this whole big hullabaloo. So then she got this job and she has all this pressure on herself and she just feels like a fraud, honestly. So the two of them are working together, but of course they also have the hots for one another. And they're working to find this cure and things kind of come to light, but they also have that, like, since they're working together, a little bit of that forced proximity thing going on, and they decide to have some sexy times together. So I give this one 4 stars. I thought it was super cute, very steamy, quite enjoyable. I was smiling throughout most of this book. It's very quick to get through as well. I think this was more like novella length of a book. This one I did feature in my underrated romances. So if you haven't seen that video, you should definitely check it up in the cards, and I will link it down below as well. So I definitely plan on reading more from this author. I just really loved the cozy vibes of this story. It was just very nice to get into. Then I have Wildcat by Max Monroe, which is the first book of the Mavericks Tackle Love series. I believe this is a contemporary romance, sports romance. This one I gave 1 star, and it's kind of a DNF, sort of. I never really know exactly how to do my DNFs because I got most of the way through this book when I decided that I was done. So that's why I kind of went ahead and gave it a 1 star, especially because I found some things to be problematic with this story. So this is a story about our two characters. He's a football player, and then she is a flight attendant. And they meet on a flight, but it gets derailed and ends up going not to the destination it's supposed to. They have to land early because of some sort of like weather issue. And then both of them need to get somewhere else. So they end up taking a train ride together and just talking and having a great conversation and just being totally infatuated with one another. So it starts out really cute. However, I think this is a classic case of white authors not knowing how to write characters of color, and not knowing the best way to handle that, because I did find quite a few things about the story to be problematic in that regard. Our female character is of mixed race, and there's just a lot of things that just didn't really sit well with me. So the way that they describe this character, they use a lot of food terms to describe how she looks. But she's the only one that is described this way. None of the other characters are really described in that manner. There is also a lot of stereotypes that this book plays into that I don't think is very flattering. One about like Black women. She uses like foul language at times and nobody else does. And it's just certain things that I just feel like played negatively, a negative impact, like how to view like Black women. There's also a big issue with like racism, like his character, his parents are from the Deep South. And so I feel like that also plays into that stereotype of white Southerners being racist. And then the big conflict of this story happens to be over race. And I just feel like this was not done in the best way. I honestly wish these authors would have left a lot of that out, which if they did, yeah, this would have probably not been my favorite story. It would have been a cute story, maybe not as memorable, but some of these things I just left a sour taste in my mouth, especially because I am trying to read more diversely and read more critically and notice some of these things. So it's a no for me. And because I read this story, this is my first story from the author duo Max Monroe. I don't know if I'm going to read any more from them, just because I felt like this was just very poorly done, unfortunately. But on the flip side, moving on to my next book, which I absolutely loved, was The End Game by Riley Hart. This is another contemporary romance, first book of the Atlanta Lightning. I don't know if this is a duet or if this is a series. This first book. This one is a male-male romance. This is a football romance. Our Anson is a pro football player, but he is in the closet. And he ends up running into Weston, who is a very openly out and proud gay senator. Runs into him at a bar, and of course, sparks fly between these two characters. Weston wants to have a fling with Anson, but Anson is worried because he is in the closet and he doesn't really want to acknowledge his sexuality. He is worried about what this could do for him and his career, but they kind of strike up a friendship. They text each other, and he just can't help but be drawn to Weston and kind of finally give in and kind of explore what he has suppressed all of his life with his sexual desires. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this story. It was so good. It was so sweet. These two characters, how they fall for one another and how much they support one another is just so beautiful. I was tearing up throughout this story. There is trigger warnings in this one for bigotry, and there's also homophobia that happens in this story, but just how much these two characters show up for one another and support one another. It was such a heartwarming story, and I loved it. And I can't wait to read more from this author. I am dying to read the second book of the story. I just thought this was so swoon-worthy, and I loved it so much. Then I have Kissed and Missed. This is the second book of the Daddy Issue series by Cleo White. This is a contemporary romance novella. This is another arc that I read. This is a super cute, steamy little story. So our female main character, she ended up over Christmas break. She ended up staying a few days with her ex-girlfriend's dad. Didn't mean to be staying those few days with her. She was supposed to be staying them with her girlfriend as well. But then on the way to the dad's house, she finds out that her girlfriend has been cheating on her, and they break up. And so then she gets to his house and she has nowhere to go, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to get on a flight back home. And he just offers to let her stay because he honestly kind of knows that his daughter is not the greatest person. But of course, with her staying, then they are both very attracted to one another, and they just have a great rapport with one another. They start talking to each other. So she ends up going back home, but they remain friends and are texting each other. And then he finally decides it's getting close to Valentine's Day. He is finally just going to make a move and show her that he wants more with her and that they can be together, and he's going to support her in whatever she wants. So he's like this billionaire tech mogul guy, and so he comes and he offers her her dream job And yeah, then things just kind of go from there. So I give this one 4 stars. This is novella, super quick, very cute, very steamy. I didn't like this one as much as the first book of the series. The first book I like devoured. I loved it so much. This one, it was still really good. I still really enjoyed it. I just didn't like it as much as that first one. There should be another book in this series at some point. I'm super excited to read that one as well. I've been enjoying Cleo White's writing, so I'm a fan. Age gap, I'm so here for it. Then we have Make Room for Love by Darcy Liao. I will think is how you say that name. This is contemporary romance. This is a sapphic romance. So we have our 2 characters. Isabel is an electrician. She's kind of a butch lesbian. She ends up rescuing Mira from her ex-boyfriend after this run-in that they have together. And Mira is desperately looking for a place to stay because she had been living with her ex-boyfriend. So Isabel is needing a roommate, offers her apartment, and that's how these 2 characters kind of fall into one another's orbit. Mira ends up needing help from Isabel because Mira is trying to get this a union started on campus. She has a campus graduate assistant job. And yeah, and then over the course of them living together, they slowly form a romance. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. I thought this was cute. It was just very, very slow. I needed a little bit more action or something else going on. I struggled to get through this. Nothing honestly terribly wrong with this story. It just was such a slow pace for me. I was getting bored, honestly. That's the only reason it gets 3.5 stars. Otherwise, this is, like I said, it was a cute story. It has that forced proximity thing going on. It also has a little bit of hurt comfort because Isabel is grieving the death of her sister. There's a lot of things that are going on, and Mira is dealing with her somewhat abusive ex that she has. There's also trans rep in here, so I loved having that. I honestly, that's something that I need to prioritize and read more of is trans representation in my stories. So I was happy that I was able to get that with this story. I would try this author out again. Like I said, it was just so slow. It took forever to get through this story. And then the last book, we're finally to the last book that I read. I read Fake Out by Eden Finley. This is the first book of the Fake Boyfriend series. This is a male-male romance series. Our Maddox is invited to his ex's wedding and is asked to bring his boyfriend. He is not gay, but that is the excuse that he used to break up with his ex-girlfriend. So everybody in his hometown thinks that he is gay and is expecting him to bring a boyfriend. He does not have a boyfriend because, like I said, he is not gay. So his best friend offers up her brother as a fake dating scenario. And then, of course, because as with all fake dating books, with the forced proximity with them being together and pretending that they are dating, they start to fall for one another, and Maddox starts to question his sexuality. He admits that he did have some dalliances in college with men, so, he questions if he's maybe bisexual, and of course they have a romance together. So I give this one 4 stars. I just gave that 4 stars because I thought this was enjoyable. I found it to be quite funny. They get into some ridiculous scenarios, and I just enjoyed it. Nothing too much more or insightful to say about the story. So that is all the books that I read. So in total, we're getting to kind of some of my stats, not a ton of them. I read 14 books for January. That is the most books that I have read in a few months, I believe. So super proud of that I've started off the year at such a good reading high. I have read 2 5-star stories. So I read a Kennedy Ryan story at the beginning of the month and then the Riley Hart book. So also glad about that. I ended up meeting 3 of the 5 goals that I had set for myself. So I need to keep working on that. I did read a nonfiction story. I did read at least 3 stories by BIPOC authors. So I'm going to continue doing that. I did read at least 1 story featuring an LGBTQ relationship. I ended up reading, I believe, 3, maybe 4 stories, because I believe I think Jockstraps and Newspapers, those characters are both bisexual. So it's a bi for bi story. And then I read a sapphic romance and then 2 Achilleid romances. So I did great with that. But however, I only read 2 books from KU this month because I had so many arcs that I was reading. And I did read some books that I already had in my Kindle. I also had a goal to try to read a book from my bookshelves. I did not end up meeting that goal. I am still working on that book. It's taking me a little bit longer, but I'm trying. And I did meet a few different prompts for the various reading challenges that I am doing. If you want to learn more about those different reading challenges, I will put links down below to those. I will also put a link to my Instagram story that I made talking about just kind of going over what I read for the prompts and where I'm at with those. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I know it's really long and I apologize. I didn't realize that I read so many books, but I'm very proud of myself. So if you like this video, make sure that you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already, of course. And also leave a comment down below with some of the books that you read in January. What was your favorite book that you read in the month of January? I want to know. I love hearing from y'all. But yeah, that's going to be it. I'm going to stop rambling. I'll see you all later. Bye, guys.